Do you know about the dongle? You put this, stick the little thing in.
I know you love your dongle bag, right?
I know that you don't want a dongle to come with your new phone.
A what?
A dongle.
I don't want a dongle ever.
There's a lot of different dongles here.
This silly little adapter is called a dongle.
It is dongle. But I'm looking at all these.
Right, a dongle. If you've purchased a laptop or a phone in the last 5 years, I'm sure you know what these are. And many of us can't do what we need to do without these connectors, which makes them a big business.
Belkin is an example. You're looking at a couple $100 million that I believe that they're doing in dongles.
It's been a big portion of our business, a very, very high percentage of our business, in the 70% range of our business in the past.
These companies and others like them have created a huge market, which is estimated to bring in more than $25 billion by 2027.
I'm talking to you on this 2012 MacBook Pro, and just looking at the ports on the side of it, we have power, Ethernet, Firewire 800, display out, right? 2 USB ports, SD slot, microphone in, microphone out, and that's just on that side. That's the way things ought to be.
We have this constant march to thinner, okay? And our constant move to thinner means that the interfaces need to be thinner.
But this march to be thinner has caused a lot of problems for users. I have this brick next to my computer that I have to use to plug in my microphone and my SD cards and my monitor. I literally couldn't do the work I need to do without it. And honestly, I don't mind it. It doesn't take up that much room on my desktop. It plugs into one USB-C port on the side of my computer, but it was $260. I had to buy a $260 dock to use my $3,000 laptop. And YouTuber Tech Me Out agrees that video editing nowadays requires some sort of dongle.
When you go to a launch event, especially within the tech space, and you're finished filming, you oftentimes want to go back, dump the footage on your computer and start editing and go ahead and get your content out as soon as possible. So time is of the essence. But when I forgot the dongle, it basically had me stuck for a few moments until I could figure out an alternative solution.
But with wireless technology constantly on the heels of these connectors, how long can the dongle domination really last? Dongles have been around for as long as technology has required one thing to be plugged into another.
It could be connecting a computer to a printer, which is Belkin's legacy dating back to 1983. That's how we started.
There are some theories on why it's called a dongle, but the consensus is that it's a playful alteration of the word dangle. Apple is one of the main reasons these adapters have become a huge industry. Adapters became almost essential after 2016 when the company removed the headphone jack from its iPhone lineup and replaced everything but the headphone jack with USB-C ports on its MacBook lineup. Even though it's not the only company that nixed the port variety on its products, Apple is the company that has throughout history encouraged the rest of the industry to remove ports.
But it's so much more versatile than that. Each one of the ports can be power, can be Thunderbolt, can be USB, DisplayPort, video out with VGA.
Let's take a look at how the MacBook Pro lineup has changed in the last decade or so. The early 2008 model included FireWire 400 and 800, USB 2 ports, an express card slot, a disk drive, an audio in and out port, a DVI port, and an Ethernet port. The late 2008 model kept everything but the FireWire 400 and swapped the DVI port for a mini display port. Most of the mid-2019 models swapped the express card slot for a way more useful SD card slot. Early 2011 models got bumped up to Thunderbolt and SDXC ports. It was the mid-2012 MacBook Pro Retina that started to shake things up. It featured a new MagSafe 2, meaning folks with the old MagSafe connector needed an adapter, and swapped the separate audio in and out ports for one headphone port. But it added an HDMI port. And then the 2016 lineup came along and wiped the sides of the MacBook Pro clean, and replaced them with the more universal USB-C. This is the form factor we know today, only the USB-C ports are faster and rebranded to Thunderbolt 3. Outside of Apple, you're much more likely to see an HDMI port or a USB-A port on laptops, especially laptops marketed as business laptops from companies like HP and Dell. There are still companies that are selling USB-A accessories like external hard drives, and people still use HDMI ports to connect to their TVs.
It's a constantly moving target, and you have devices all in the market that have different type of interfaces like DVI, mini DVI, HDMI.
So why do ports keep changing? Well, some people might speculate that it's to create a new revenue stream. I mean, why does a connector like this have to cost $70? More realistically, one reason is because manufacturers keep wanting to make products that are thinner and thinner.
I think they tried to streamline the workflow in their eyes and, keep it simple at the core of things. But sometimes with the simplicity, it restricts you and limits you.
Designers want to remove everything, right? Their perfect product is a product with no ports. They want to just charge wirelessly, and there's no ports that you plug in ever, right? Because that's effort that the user has to put in. Some cell phone companies like to say the headphone jack was limiting the thinness of the phone, but I don't think that's really the case with the headphone jack. You can pry my audio jack headphones out of my cold dead hands.
I wish I at least had what I consider for me at least the essential ports, at least the USB hub, USB-C, and SD card slot on my computer. So I wouldn't have to solely rely on a hub or a dongle for those things.
But for Belkin, dongles are a byproduct of progress and innovation.
While it can be difficult and you have to adapt and adjust to change, the long-term benefits of pushing forward, bringing new ideas, new technology, faster enhancements, easier ways of working, I think brings benefit that far exceed any of the challenges that we see when we go through those transitions.
Here's my setup. I use an SD card reader for my footage, a USB-A for my microphone and charger, a display port for my display. Apple sells all of these adapters separately, ranging from $10 to $70, and other companies sell docks that include all of these ports, and those can be $100, $250 or more.
I think you're looking at a multi-billion-dollar industry.
You should take like a $2,500 MacBook Pro and then go on the Apple Store and buy all the dongles that you need to get the capability that a 2012 MacBook Pro is. How much money would that be? It's insane.
In specific with computers, especially when my friends and family are telling me they're thinking about getting a newer computer, I got to make sure I get them to factor in as well the additional accessories that they're going to need. It's not an option.
But it's hard to pin down how big of a moneymaker this industry really is.
Most of the companies that are in the dongle industry don't actually tell anybody how much they make out of it.
Apple includes the sales of adapters along with the testing and licensing from third-party manufacturers in its wearables, home, and accessories category, which brought in over $30 billion in 2020.
If I back out of other, which includes things like watch, and things that the company doesn't want to break out, you're looking at $100-200 million just in licensing and testing.
Show up at one of the Apple keynotes and watch the reporters with their go bags and count how many dongles they have and then multiply every dongle by $29. It's hundreds of dollars. So absolutely there's a large part of Apple's bottom line associated with this.
And then there are the environmental impacts. On the one hand, you have these extra products that we need to buy that use metal and plastic and other materials that we wouldn't need if those ports were included in our phones and our laptops.
Their environmental impact is a lot lower than, a phone or something. Now, some of them do have circuitry and chips in them, like a lot of Apple's, like MFI cables. You have to be doing the multiplication times hundreds of millions of these things being sold to really have an environmental impact. But that is happening, right?
On the other hand, dongles make things like laptops more versatile and therefore longer lasting. Think about an SD card. If a new technology comes along that's better and faster and more reliable than SD cards, I don't have to get a new laptop. I can just swap out my dongle or my adapter.
So when you sell a product, you have how adaptable and flexible it is related to how long it will last.
I do think dongles do mean some more plastic, but I think the corresponding benefit, though, is less metal and less plastic and less battery in the new designs.
For its part, Belkin has a sustainability program in place to make sure it's contributing to solutions.
The pace of technology is not going to slow down. We need to figure out how to adapt to those things in the right way, and we're committed to doing those things. We feel like we're making progress, but we have an enormous amount of work to do to really get where we want to go over time.
And so in these new iPad Pros, we're moving to USB-C.
With the increase of dongles, we've also seen the rise of the USB-C port, which is incredibly versatile and powerful. Even Apple broke from its proprietary Lightning port on the iPad lineup to include USB-C, and some folks speculated the iPhone lineup would make the swap too.
In the new world of USB-C everything, if you were to say, well, we got rid of all ports, but now we're standardizing, and in the future, USB-C is going to be the port on everything. And so really what you need is adapters between the legacy functionality and sort of the port of the future. I think you can make a little bit more of a case for it, but I don't know. I mean, the microphone I'm talking to you is USB-A, not USB-C, and so I don't have a way of plugging it into a new laptop. The webcam I'm using is USB-A. You can't plug into the laptop.
Even EVs, electric vehicles, are getting their own adapters. But just because dongles are everywhere does not mean they're the right solution. In fact, it's rumored that Apple is bringing the built-in SD card reader back to its MacBook lineup.
Apple's re-inclusion of the SD card, I think, is going to be a great example where, although Apple would never say it, they made a mistake. HP, based on their research, made one of their notebooks thicker to be able to fit in a full HDMI, because that's what businesses wanted, is because they didn't want a ton of dongles that they had to support.
But make no mistake, the trend is moving towards fewer ports. Apple's move to MagSafe for its iPhone 12 lineup is seen by some as a precursor to a totally portless iPhone.
Wireless is always the technology that's going to make the cable go away. And we've been talking about that for 30 years. We always find a way to outperform wireless.
Like the moment that you're wireless, you are dependent on wireless technologies that are fickle, right? I'll give you an example of an area where I gave a manufacturer a really hard time. Sonos, they sold all these smart speakers without ports. So they didn't have an analog audio input. So if you have a smart speaker for your TV and the software becomes out of date, it's still a perfectly functional speaker, but because they didn't give you an analog input to it, it's not useful anymore.
The wired to wireless trend is where the majority of the growth is going to come over time.
Are you ready for this transition?
We've been making investments in those areas for many, many years now. So we're loving where the technology trends are headed. We're really excited about our product roadmaps now and the way we're thinking about the future.
We've been talking about dongles for years, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
It's a love and hate relationship. I love the way that it expands the way in which I can connect different devices to my computer, but there's always that scenario where you're going to forget it and then you feel restricted in what you can do.
And even though trends predict the future to be a portless wireless one, these connectors will likely remain useful for years, connecting legacy technologies.
The thing that continues to be tried and true, and the thing that will last for a long time, are analog interfaces. You go back to people who invested in high-end audio gear in the 70s, and it still works today just as good as it ever did. We have to sort of resist the temptation to buy whatever shiny thing the manufacturers are pitching right now, because you go back to your Audio Technicas and they're going to be just fine. They're going to last long enough for you to hand them off to your kids.
Do I like the prices that they have, particularly the docks? I don't, but I do think they're worth it because it allows the entire world to connect together. 10 to 15 years of devices to be able to connect to each other. I think that's a good thing.
They could be useful for quite a few more years, so hang on to your
Dongle, 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 dongle.
You like saying it?
Wow, that just does not sound good.